What's up, internets? Welcome to another edition of the Hateful Truth video game review series, where I give you maximum truth and minimum bullshit about my personal experiences with the newest video game releases. And today we're going to talk about a game... Alright, I'm glad I got that out of the way. Today we're going to talk about a game that is a downloadable title exclusively on the PlayStation right now. PlayStation 3, sorry, right now. And it's a unique game that combines artistic elements and a great story with some creative gameplay to create a short but sweet package. Now, we're going to talk about all kinds of aspects about this game, and ultimately it's going to be up to you to decide whether or not you want to spend $15 on a short game like this. Now, obviously, I'm going to draw comparisons between this game and a game from earlier this year, Journey, which I scored pretty low because I really felt that the game didn't have enough content to hold up for a $15 price tag, being that the game clocked in at under 2 hours. This is going to be a very similar situation, and we're going to have direct comparisons to let you know what my thoughts are about this game, okay? So, the name of the game is The Unfinished Swan. Now, this is a game that is very, very artistic. The game itself looks like almost like a hand-drawn art book or children's storybook, okay? And in fact, that's how the game opens up. It's a children's storybook that opens up and explains that there is a child, and forgive me, I forgot what his name was. I know it starts with an M. Maybe it was Maurice or something like that. Unfortunately, he's a young boy who's an orphan. And his mother used to paint pictures all the time, but she would never finish them. They would always be unfinished. And one day, she actually left and took a painting of a swan with her. It was the only thing that she took, but it was an unfinished swan. And so the story of The Unfinished Swan is about Maurice kind of like falling into this kind of a dream world where it's telling the story about a king. That there was a king that once ruled the land, and he was an artist, and he would paint things and create things, and then for some reason he became selfish, or he felt like he knew better than the people in his kingdom, and so he would constantly paint to change things. Now, I don't want to give away the entire story, because there are a couple surprises and things that make a lot of sense as you get further into the story. But what I want to tell you is that the story is very good. It's interesting, it keeps you hooked, you really want to know what's going to happen next, and I was very pleased with the ending of the story. I thought it was a cool twist ending that all kind of connected the dots and made everything make sense. Now, what is The Unfinished Swan? What kind of gameplay is it? Well, it's first person, but it's definitely not a shooter, okay? I would say it's more of a first person puzzle adventure game. I would compare it to a game like Portal, only it's nothing like that, really, okay? You start out in a land that's completely white. You can't see anything. The screen is white. And then you realize when you press a button, you can actually shoot out a big glob of black paint that splashes against things. Now, once it does, those things become black. So all of a sudden, you're going to start seeing that wall. You're actually in a hallway with walls, and then things are going to start to appear. Oh, a rock here, a bench here, a giant fork sticking a piece of bacon. It's pretty zany, but it's interesting at the same time. So you're going through this invisible world, throwing paint so that you can see where you're going. And as you're doing this, you're going to see storybook pages hidden throughout the world, and the way that you can recognize them is because they have a golden letter floating on each one. So if you find the golden letter, throw the glob at it, boom, it makes the storybook page, and it progresses the story in that manner. So you can progress the story by unlocking the storybook pages, and also between stages, usually there's like a cutscene or something like that explaining stuff, okay? So, what really is it? It's a cross between like a puzzler and a platformer. There is some platforming and jumping and stuff involved in the game as well. And there's really 4 unique aspects to the gameplay of the game. At the beginning of the game, you can't see anything. Everything's white. And so you throw black paint to start seeing things and to figure out how you can platform over things and get to point A to point B. Along the way, you're looking for balloons. They're actually colored balloons that are hidden throughout the stages that are collectibles, and if you hit them with your globs of paint, they count, basically they fly away, and it says, oh, you found a balloon. Now, the more balloons you collect, you can actually unlock things later on when you go to play the game. You can unlock a fire hose that gives you a super-powered, unlimited paint or water supply depending on what stage you're playing, or you can unlock other modifiers and things that'll make the game a little bit different. So it is kind of neat that there's collectibles in the game. It's not just go from point A to point B and figure it out and beat it, but also look for these hidden items. And some of the hidden items are really just like plain as day right in front of you. Other ones are kind of like, oh, what's this? There's actually a secret room over here that you couldn't see unless you threw paint all over that certain area. When you go through there, there's a balloon. And then some of them are really well hidden. In fact, there were a lot of the balloons I never even saw or found, so they must really be in cool hidden areas, okay? So, as you progress, you're going to start out with that paint aspect gameplay. When you go to the second chapter of the game, it changes from paint to water. So you're still using this to see where you're going because everything still has white areas. But in the second stage of the game, there's actually shadows. So it's not as hard. You can see like the general outlines of things, but you can't really, still you can't see any detail. And the aspect here is at first you're using the water to see, okay, to see where you're going, and then you're also using the water to hit moving switches to maybe get a gate to open or something like that. But then later on in the chapter, there's actually these vines that begin to grow throughout the kingdom, and you use the water to make the vines grow. And it does different things. It might make a bridge of vines that you can walk over to go over a gap. It may make a almost like a vine ladder or a rope that you can climb on the side of a building. So it really is an interesting kind of gameplay there. The third stage is about darkness and light, okay? So basically the third stage, you end up being outdoors in like a forest, and there are evil spiders trying to eat you and kill you. What you need to do is find light sources to stay alive. So sometimes they'll be hitting a certain hanging fruit that'll illuminate. Later on, you actually find a sphere, a glowing sphere that you throw into a river, and it's your job to run down the river next to this sphere as the water current takes it down the river, and to stay within the light's reach, or else the spiders will get you, okay? And then even further in, there's a mechanic where you actually create platforms, okay? What you do is you throw the paint and or water, whatever you want to call it, and then you throw it at one point, you throw it at another point, and then you're able to stretch and actually literally draw a shape that you can now platform on. And it's cool because there's a dual aspect of light and darkness here. You go into a light world and you build these pieces in this house. Then you cross over to a dark version of the house where you can't really see that well, but the platforms now allow you to cross the house, okay? So those are the four primary ways that you're going to play the game. And as you traverse across these three chapters, and then finally get to the fourth and final chapter, which is kind of like the epilogue of the game that ties up the story, it's going to be an interesting journey. I have to say, the only time that I actually felt a little bit bored was with the vines. There was this one point when it wasn't clear what I was supposed to be doing with the vines, and I didn't realize I was supposed to grow a certain vine that would make the ladder to go up the wall, so I was busy with the wrong vines for like 10 minutes not knowing what I was supposed to be doing. But then once I discovered what the gameplay was, that I needed to make the vine grow to make a ladder and climb it, I figured it out, and I pretty much, was able to beat the rest of the stage no problem. There are no enemies, per se, in the unfinished Swan. The only thing that ever tries to really hurt you are the spiders in the darkness level, and that's pretty short-lived. It only lasts about 5 to 10 minutes before you're out of there and there's no other enemies that are trying to get you. So it's really not that kind of game. Again, it's more of an exploration, use these cool artistic things in order to solve these kind of pretty simple puzzles, but to get to point A to point B, and ultimately to find another one of those storybook pages, hit it, and flesh out the story. Alright, so now let's start making some comparisons. Length. The game is under 2 hours long, and it is $15 on PlayStation Network, okay? A lot of people right off the bat will say, absolutely not, I'm not spending $15 for a 2-hour video game. That's absolutely preposterous. Why would I do that, okay? And it's within your right to say that. If you're the kind of person that's looking for quantity versus anything else, then this is not going to be your kind of game. I'll tell you right now. Excuse me. Whew. The art style might turn some people off. This isn't a game with like revolutionary, groundbreaking graphics. It is unique in the fact that you can't really see anything. You start using, paint and water and other things to uncover stuff. Later on in the game, it really takes a different turn with the darkness and light aspect. I think is really cool. But it's not anything groundbreaking. It's cartoony. It almost reminded me of Limbo, a game that I played a couple years back, if you remember that one. But It's nothing groundbreaking there. The gameplay. Alright, so you're only getting about 2 hours of gameplay. You do get 4 different puzzler style things that you're doing. But ultimately the gameplay is pretty simple and easy too. I don't think anyone really is going to have much of a problem with this game. Maybe you'll get stumped a little bit here or there once or twice, like I said, with the vines where it wasn't explaining to me what to do. But ultimately, if you just keep fucking around with what you have, you're going to figure out how to progress. So it's not like a super complex mind-bending puzzle game. It's just kind of a very simple one, okay? I would say by far, the best part about the Unfinished Swan is the story. Like I said, it's like a storybook, child storybook kind of a deal, but it has a unique connection to the main character, the orphan, that is revealed near the end of the game, and you're like, oh, okay, that's why the story of the king is tied to him. Now it makes sense. And I don't want to spoil for anyone, because then if you spoil it, you pretty much don't need to play the game, okay? Once you know the story of this game, there's absolutely no reason to play it. The gameplay is cool to just sit there and go through once, but the experience, once you know what everything is, you're never going to want to go back and play this game. And that is a major flaw of the game, I think. There really isn't that much replayability. Maybe you'll want to go back once or twice to try to find the balloons you didn't pick up, but after that, why? You already know the story, you know everything, so why would you want to continue on in this game? It doesn't seem to make sense, okay? Now let's directly compare this game to Journey, a game earlier this year that kind of did the same thing artistically, okay? And a lot of people gave that game super high ratings, and right now a lot of people are giving the Unfinished Swan super high ratings, which I completely disagree with. But let's compare. So both games clock in under 2 hours. Both games cost $15 when they were released on PlayStation Network, okay? Both of them are kind of unique. There's platforming, there's puzzle solving. In the case of Journey, it was third person. In the case of this game, it's first person, okay? But both don't do anything really super complex or anything unique when it comes to the gameplay. They really just don't. Journey had a very beautiful graphical style. Lots of people were saying, wow, this is the most beautiful game I've ever seen. Unfinished Swan, not so much. It's almost like a cel-shaded first-person shooter, and it's unique with the artistic style it takes, but it's not like a gorgeous game. It's just kind of a unique kind of game. But the story, this is the difference maker here for me. Because the story of Journey had no story. Journey made no sense. It was like, you are a creature, and you have to make this pilgrimage, and that's it. And then you interpret it however you want. If you want to interpret that you're a certain kind of a monk doing it, or if you want to submit this as an allegory for someone's life, where their whole life is a pilgrimage, and finally they're trying to reach the top of that mountain. Like, there's no explanation. Nowhere in the game does anyone say, okay, here's what this means, okay? And that's frustrating. If I pay $15, I want to know what the fuck I'm doing, okay? But that game just doesn't do it. It wants you to interpret it for whatever it is, okay? The Unfinished Swan has a great story. It's interesting, it's fun-filled. You want to keep following the story to find out what's going to happen to the king, what is the connection to the king and the prince, and not the prince, I'm sorry, he's not a prince, by the way, I completely misspoke there. But between the king, the orphan's mom who had drawn the Unfinished Swan and abandoned him supposedly, you want to know what's going on with all of this, okay? So here's what I'm going to say. Here's my recommendation. If you really are the kind of person that likes these artistic style games, if you really enjoyed Journey, you're probably going to enjoy Unfinished Swan. In my personal opinion, the game is overpriced, okay? $15 for under 2 hours of gameplay is not acceptable. It's way overpriced. But that being said, I think that the story and the fact that the gameplay changes 4 major times throughout the course of the game is enough to even hook someone who's skeptical about the price on the game. Like, me, after playing the game, I said, gee, you know what? That actually wasn't a bad experience. That was a cool story. I had fun playing it. I just wish I didn't spend $15 on it, okay? That's kind of how I felt when I finished The Unfinished Swan. As opposed to Journey, when I said, man, no story whatsoever, very basic, repetitive gameplay. The only thing really going for the game was the graphics. I don't understand how everyone gave this game like 9s and 10s in their reviews. These people are assholes. If you want to go look at art, Go to the fucking art museum and look at art. You don't need to pay $15 to stare at an interactive piece of art, okay? That's not what games are about. Games are supposed to be that. Games with gameplay that hook you, alright? In Journey, it didn't have it. In this game, The Unfinished Swan, it kind of does. The fact that there's variety in the gameplay, that the different chapters mix up what you're doing, enough to where when you get to the end of the story, you never really felt like it was too stale, or it was repetitive, or you were doing too much of the same thing. It was interesting enough to keep you hooked on the story that you wanted to keep playing the game. So unlike Journey, this is a game, like I said, I did actually enjoy it while I was playing it, even to the very end. And the only negative that I have to say about the game is that it was $15, okay? A little bit overpriced for a game that's under 2 hours of gameplay. So, like I said, if you like artistic games, you're going to love The Unfinished Swan. This is right up your alley. If you don't like artistic games, but you're just looking for something to kill a couple hours and you want to have a really interesting, unique experience and get a really cool story out of it, this is the game for you. But if you're the kind of gamer who says, if I'm going to spend my hard-earned dollars, I better get maximum for my buck, this is not what you're going to want. This is not going to be your cup of tea, okay? So for what it is, I feel The Unfinished Swan is a unique game. It's a beautiful game. It's a fun game. It's an interesting story. And most people, if you're not going to buy the game and play it, I do actually recommend that you watch a playthrough of it, because this is a game that, like, you want to experience this fun story and say, you know what, that was a pretty cool game for 2012. I hope that in the future they continue to make games like this. In fact, if they had a game like this that had a lot more gameplay, that the story was longer and more complex, and they could sell it for $60 because maybe it's 6 to 8 hours long, that would probably be a Game of the Year contender. And no, I'm not kidding. It kind of, if they had done more with it, it probably would have been on par with a game like Portal, okay? But that's not what they were going for. They were going for short and sweet. So, I enjoy it, but I think it's overpriced. And I do think, once again, all these people giving it 9s and 10s in the mainstream gaming media are these fucking flaky people who think just because something's pretty or just because something's different, that it's... Oh, sorry about that. I know I was mid-sentence and we have a jump cut here, but it's because my battery on my camera died. I guess what's happening is I've had the camera now for over 2 years, and the batteries that I've been using are starting to actually get old and die out on me. But anyway, for the point I was making is it's a fun experience. You should definitely watch a playthrough of this game no matter what. I really think you should experience it, and it could, if it were extended significantly in length and the story was extended with it, it could have retailed as a great game and might have even been considered for one of the best games of this year. However, being that that's not what they went for short and sweet, only under 2 hours of gameplay, I gotta rank it for what it is. In comparison to all the other games I played this year, was it unique? Yeah. Was it fun? Yeah. But was it really a better experience? No, it wasn't. In fact, I'm gonna rank it pretty fairly here. In regards to all the other games that I've played this year, I'm going to give The Unfinished Swan a 7.5, okay? It's definitely different. It's better than like an average game, but at the same time, it's too short to really say, wow, this is great and it's worth $15. I think primarily the #1 complaint everyone will have about the game is that it's way too pricey. That is too much of a price tag for a game that you're only going to play for under 2 hours and probably never even go back to. So, The Unfinished Swan, it's a unique game. Again, if you like this style of game, if you like artistic stuff, you're probably going to like the game. Definitely check it out. If not, I still recommend you watch a playthrough of the game because the game is unique. I think it's a cool step in a direction that we could take with games in the future, real full-length games, not 2-hour games. And I think that you should watch it and say, wow, that was probably, you know, worth watching. So definitely check out my playthrough if you get a chance, okay? But Unfinished Swan, because it is what it is, because it's so short, I give it a 7.5, okay? Alright, so that's it for the Hateful Truth video game review. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that now you know my honest thoughts on the Unfinished Swan. You know whether or not to check it out, and you know what to expect if you do check it out. And that's pretty much it. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time on the Hateful Truth. Peace.